Hey, 8th grade. Today we had our last Zoom session before spring break where we finished talking about the progressive era. Now, when we talk about the progressive era, we're talking about the different political... Hey, TR, how are you? You want to join in? Okay, all right, go ahead. All right, Theodore Roosevelt, our most progressive president. Put a little heart around him. It's supposed to, well, there you go. All right, TR. Here we go. Okay, we looked at how the progressive era was a bunch of social, economic, and political changes to better the people of the nation. It basically reformed the Gilded Age, where people who were making ruthless amounts of money, practicing cutthroat tactics from a business standpoint, would ensure that they were not the only ones who were going to benefit. We wanted to see that other people... We know, TR, we want the average person to benefit. I know. Okay, so that the average people will benefit from this progressive era. The most important question I asked you today that we talked about in our Zoom session was, how do we live in a progressive era today? So here's the thing. Our world is very much the progressive era because of the creation of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, right? We have medicines that tell us what they cure and they give us the ingredients. So when you take a pill, you don't die. We have on hamburger labels, it tells you the percentage of the meat that is beef and like fat-free, blah, 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 whatever. And so because of that, that's because of the Meat Inspection Act. We have the Pure Food and Drug Act, which tells us that ingredients must be listed on all medicines and food items. So that way companies can't take advantage of the workers and those taking the You like that, TR? I do too. Taking the products. So we also live in a world of national parks. Had it not been for Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and William Howard Taft, we wouldn't have the national parks and National Forest Service. We also have all of these antitrust laws to ensure that the big businesses and big companies stay in check. So that way, the labor is protected. And that's the most important thing we're looking at, is the labor, the worker. One of the things that we examined in our discussion in the Zoom today was that the minimum wage average person is protected. If you think about what kind of world we're living in right now, the average employee, like the average worker in the country, the person that works at McDonald's or Walmart or Target, or is it a takeout restaurant? Those people are vital right now. And so really nobody cares about how much the lawyer is making or how much the dentist is making or how, well, and that's kind of the thing too, because they're actually directly affected by all this because lawyers aren't getting clients and dentists aren't getting patients. So actually they're struggling. But it's the minimum wage, low class people that people during the progressive era were trying to protect are the most directly affected today too. So it's also a time, the progressive era, where there are a lot of reforms. We have the the federal income tax created, the 16th Amendment, right? We see the 17th Amendment with the direct election of senators. So now we, the people, vote for the senators instead of the governments of the states appointing their buddies. We have the 18th Amendment, prohibition, getting rid of alcohol because that was a big social reform. We have the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. Massive amendments happen, massive changes through amendment policies happen in the progressive era in a way to make sure that the wealthy paid their fair share, the people got to vote for their senators, alcohol could be rid from the nation, which would also kind of give people a social morality, and women getting the right to vote, Wyoming being the first territory and the first state to grant women the right to vote, mainly to attract women to move out west. So that way, Wyoming wouldn't just be a territory and a state full of men who had worked on the railroads and who would open up the frontier. It was a way to get women to move into the western territories. So, and Montana and Idaho, they would follow suit as well with Idaho with giving women the right to vote. Now, one of the big things that we talked about in the Zoom session today that's important with the progressive era, both then and today, is how does the government get involved and help the people? Today, one of you mentioned and asked about the government stimulus package, right? The $2 trillion stimulus package. That's massive. The government realized that there was a situation at hand where the average American would financially struggle. 9 million people file for unemployment. Jobs are being cut all over the place. Malls are closing. Stores are closing. Hours are being cut. We're starting to see how fragile the global economy is and how fragile a nation we are when it comes to a pandemic. What we see too is that The government getting involved, the government stimulating or trying to create a stimulus package is a way for the government of saying, we got you, average worker. We have you, average citizen. We know. More than a third of Americans today cannot live past 1 month in their savings account, meaning their savings account can only get them 1 month. And then after that, they financially don't have any more money. That's not necessarily the worker's fault. That's not necessarily their fault that they have that little money. Cost of living has increased over time. The ability to live a sustainable life has become expensive. Healthcare is expensive. Everything's expensive. You kids are expensive, right? Even TR is agreeing with that. Now, the thing is that these checks and this package are an attempt for the government in a progressive manner to come in and reform things, to try to say, we want to take care of you, but we don't want you to rely on the government, but we'll bail you out when you need it. So giving these government checks to people, hoping that when the time comes, the economy will open back up, businesses will hire again, employees will go back to work, and that money right now will help them pay some of their bills, and it will also create spending. Whereas most people are probably, like me, going to take that check and put it in their bank account and let it sit there and then use it on their bills when they come in. But the idea is that when the parks and the businesses open back up, we, the consumers, will go out and spend that money again. That's a very progressive idea too. During the progressive era, these government employees thought to themselves, how can we regulate the government but ensure that the government takes care of the people without simply just taking care of the people, taking care of the lower class? The progressive era showed us that people do need to be held accountable and that the worker is just as important as the CEO. And these are the issues that we still see today. Health insurance companies are being reformed. Spending a ridiculous amount of money on insulin and drugs for diabetes for someone who unfortunately may be born with that disease. Why should they be financially held hostage to the situation that they were born into a situation they have to pay for those medicines? Why should a medical company be able to hold that price high over their head? These are things that the progressives looked at, that would have looked at now. And also how the government manages and allocates money and how the government should send or would send stimulus packages and stimulus checks to the citizens to ensure that right now we're only in a recession, not a depression. For those of you that did your research paper on Herbert Hoover or Franklin Delano Roosevelt, you'd understand concepts like the New Deal and the stock market crashing, where millions and billions of dollars are lost. And now it needs to rebound again. But the way the economy rebounds is that we, the investors, we, the private citizens, spend money. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this unit on the progressive era. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you enjoyed learning about these reforms. And I hope you enjoyed hanging out with Theodore Roosevelt for a couple of lessons. Happy Passover, happy spring break, and be good.